Guys, I hope you're having an awesome day. It's Sunday, raining in the UK, but it's okay. It's nice and warm, so all very blessed, guys. I wanted to do a video about the slavery. It's not for the faint-hearted. I have experienced slavery, especially when I went out for the first. I think I'm the first one in my bloodline, to my family, that went out with a black man. So after that, I couldn't believe how many times I was stopped by the police asking me ridiculous questions, just because I was dating a black man. When my husband told me that there's still a lot of racism in the UK and other countries, I couldn't believe it till I actually experienced it. But anyway, there was somebody, a very clever reptilian man, one of the reptilian elite, who in the 1700s wrote a book about how to make a human into a slave, especially for black people, but anybody could, be under their slavery psychological manipulation. And since then, those are actually the techniques that they've been using then. They haven't been changed. They are exactly the same, or there's some more research through the Nazis and other things, to make it even stronger. But the basis of how to make somebody into a slave are explained here. I'm going to use the terminology that they use, and I'm sorry again, stop this video if you are quite sensitive, because the words I'm going to be used are quite like Negroes, they're quite rape. Basically, I'm going to brutally say it as it is. And sometimes I have my little arguments with the source, saying, am I going to have to do a video about this? It's not the essence of Amor. Amor prefers a gentle and doing beautiful things and lifting the energy, but also, there is the other side, and we cannot deny what's happening in this world, and the truth has to be told. If the truth has not been told, at the end of the day, when is it going to be told? And I know it's a sensitive issue, but we need to raise about our sensitivity and raise awareness of what's happening in the world, so we can all together as one family and tribe overcome it. Okay, so there it goes. A little bit of a longer video, but trust me when I said all the videos coming this way are for a reason, are because it's the end of days, is to raise the frequency in these groups, to bring more people awareness, and for you to join us on a way, not just to come and say like and watch the content, to tell others about the content, that they're good, to help us raise awareness, to be one family that awaken the whole human race. It's nice when we get help, the enlightened ones, it's quite nice because we do a lot of work, guys. Anyway, it was Willie Lynch is the main contributor regarding the brutal and inhuman psychology behind the African slave trade. For plantations owners, slavery was a business, and the victims of slavery were merely pawns in an economic game of debauchery, crossbreeding, interracial rape, because there was a lot of rape of female, and mental conditioning of a negroid race they consider actually subhuman. I know. Equally important is the international nature of the European economic, political, and cultural climate that influenced the slave trade. There were so many debates during the colonial periods in the United States and the late 1700s. The attention of national government was mainly directed to slavery and the rising numbers of slaves traded and imported into the South. The first debate held in Congress, I believe it was in 1789, on the question whether taxes should be paid on imported slaves. During the debate on the slavery duty bill, which was introduced by Mr. Clymer's committee, Parker of Virginia moved that on the 13th of May, 1789, and actually it was implemented. There was a tax of $10, which cost a lot per capita, be laid on slaves imported. Others, nice ones, like Roger Sherman of Connecticut, he could not reconcile himself to the insertion of human beings as an article of duty among goods, wares, and merchandise. He could not see human beings be made as merchandise. He just couldn't, yeah. But Negroes were better as a slave, as they said. The other side declared that, the nice people, by laws of God and men, these captured Negroes are entitled to their freedom as clearly as and absolutely like anybody else. Regardless of economic prosperity during the African slave trade and the tedious burden placed on the backs of African people, most will agree that the psychological damage and atrocities inflicted on black people during that point of time, and even today, are the most outrageous examples of injustice and oppression ever experienced by humanity. Let's see what's happening in America when the police think that they can just shoot somebody because he's black. Yeah, without having a gun, done anything wrong, or having any proof, they just shoot them and they kill them. And it's been quite a few, isn't it, lately? And we can see that they're black. That doesn't happen with white people. And the amount of people who join, going, and cause a revolution to say to the government, this is not right, this is not correct, but they've done it peacefully. We don't want to argue, we don't want to be angry, we want to do it peacefully, isn't it? And I find it very sad because, as I said, I experienced some ridiculous racism. I remember once, it was during the day and it was sunny, and my husband and I said, we were getting some sunglasses. And, it just happened that, the day came, the sun just came out, and I forgot to take my sunglasses, and so did my husband, who is so used to sunglasses, throughout the summer. And then the police stopped us, telling us why we were wearing sunglasses. They actually accused us of taking drugs, which we were not. And that kept happening to me. I was driving the car, and one of the lights, it just happened that it wasn't working, it stopped working, and I needed to go to the car. It's a little light on, nothing major, and I would stop, like if I had committed a major crime. Yes, because I was driving next to a black man. It's the amount of times they stopped me because he was driving, asking us for the driving license. It was just ridiculous. It's like the police had nothing else to do than follow black people and try to condemn them. And the white people who are with them try to condemn them as well. So, they try to break a relationship because it's too much to bear if you're not used to so much racism, isn't it? This is kind of the untold story, of William Lynch. It's a materialistic viewpoint of southern plantations owners that slavery was a business, and the victims of chattel slavery were merely pawns in an economic game, of crossbreeding that was considered subhuman, as I mentioned. Equally important is the international nature of European economic, political, and cultural climate that influenced the slave trade. Within the time scale of African history, it was a relatively short period, a mere 1.5 centuries, from the most intensive phase of the Atlantic slave trade to the advent of European administration and dominance. Long before that, the slave coast had been chartered by the Portuguese and the people of the area west of Benin. Between the Volta River and Lagos, a little bit of history, European traders trace a cultural history which linked them with the earliest Yoruba settlements to the north and eastern borders of Africa. And there were, considerable debates during the colonial periods in the United States and the late 1700s. The attention of the national government was mainly directed to slavery and the rising numbers of slaves traded and imported into the South. The first debate was held in Congress in 1789 on the question of whether taxes should be paid on imported slaves. Yeah, there was tax. During the debate on the slavery duty bill, which was introduced by Mr. Clymer's committee, Parker of Virginia moved that on the 13th of May, 1789, and a tax of $10 per capita be laid on the slaves imported. That's a lot of money, $10, isn't it? At that time. He plainly stated that the tax was designed to check the trade, and he was sorry that the Constitution prevented Congress from prohibiting the importation altogether. The proposal was evidently unwelcome and caused extended debate. Smith of South Carolina wanted to postpone the matter, so big with the serious consequences to the state he represented. Roger Sherman of Connecticut could not reconcile himself to the insertion of human beings as an article of duty among goods, wares, and merchandise. Some people were nice and went against what was happening. Jackson of Georgia argued against any restriction and thought such states such as Virginia ought to let their neighbors get supply before they impose such a burden upon the importation. Some congressmen argued during that Congress should wipe off the stigma under which America labored. This brought Jackson against to his feet. He believed, in spite of the fashion of the day, that Negroes were better off as slaves than as freedmen, and that as the tax was partial, it would be the most odious tax Congress could impose. And such sentiments were a distinct advance in pro-slavery doctrine and called for a protest from Congressman Madison of Virginia. There were both moral arguments and legal positions to the question of slavery in the South. On the one side, it began with the rights of man and descended to sticking for it to have a decent appearance on the statute book. On the other side, it began with the uplifting of the heaven and descended to a denial of the applicability of moral principles to the question. And, was what one of the sides declared, isn't it, that by the laws of God and man, these captured Negroes, as they call them, are entitled to their freedom as clearly, as absolutely as we are. Nevertheless, some were willing to leave them to tender mercies of the slave states, so long as the statute book was not disgraced by no explicit recollection of slavery. The moral questions were argued back and forth, but there were no question of the tremendous profitability using slavery in exchange for molasses, sugar, textile, spices, and the massive free labor of the cotton production on numerous plantations in the South. The system began with a conspirational battle of wits between European traders and African chiefs. Slave traders were not only required to know the state of the trade if they were to see a profit, but also to know the likely supply of slaves available on one hand and the likely supply of ships on the other. Also, the varying values of many different standards of payment. Coins were seldom or never used on the coast. Mostly the ships and slave traders dealt in rolls of tobacco, barrels of rum, and firearms, and generally in lengths of iron or copper, or in pots and basins of brass. The slavers' books are full of all of this. Regardless of the economic prosperity enjoyed during the African slave trade and the tedious burden placed on the backs of African people, most will agree that the psychological damage and atrocities inflicted on Black people during that point of time and even today are the most outrageous example of injustice and oppression ever experienced by humanity. When I have clients that are Black, the amount of generational intruding fields we had to remove is incredible, because it all comes from the slavery, and all of that is on the generational field. So one of the first things we need to treat is that. Yeah, because it is on their field. There is still that fear that people will put them down, will be racist towards them, we consider them to be, subhuman. And the message of William Lynch, although that it was, said in 1712, it's the message is true today. That's how they were. He said that, he did a speech on the banks of the James River in the year of our Lord, 1712, and he thanked the gentlemen of the colony of Virginia for bringing him there. And he said that he was here to help solve some of their problem with the slave. He said that, ancient Rome would envy the program that he put in place to actually, control slavery. Deep things, isn't it? And he says, well, Rome used to use cords of wood as crosses for standing human bodies along its hallways in great numbers. Here are using the tree and rope on occasion. What does that mean? Well, he was saying that he caught the whiff of a dead slave hanging from a tree a couple of miles back. And, he says that you are losing valuable stuff by hanging people. You are hanging up rising slaves are running away, and your crops have on the slave in the fields too long for maximum profit. You suffer occasional fires, your animals are killed. And he says that, he said that they were actually doing the wrong thing by killing slaves and hanging them on crosses for other, to instigate fear to other slaves, because, well, if you're killing them, they cannot work anymore. You're wasting necessary, arms that they could be doing some work. So he was saying this is not the way of doing it, and he had a foolproof method for controlling their black slaves. And he guaranteed every one of them that if it's installed correctly, could control the slaves for at least 300 years with this method, if not forever. Yeah. So he outlined, now listen to this, is when it gets interesting. He outlined a number of differences among the slaves, and he took this difference and made them bigger. So he used fear, distrust, and envy, fear, distrust, and envy for control purposes. And this is what is used today. Yeah, envy more for the youngsters to want to be like the shadows, like the celebrities. These methods have worked on the plantations of William Lynch in the West Indies, and it broke throughout the South as he promised. And he started talking about it. So on the top of his list was age, but this was because it started with A, it's all a code. The second is color or shade. There is intelligence, size, sex, size plantations, status on plantation, attitude of owners, whether the slaves live in the valley, on the hill, east, west, north, south, have fine hair, coarse hair, tall, short. Now that you have a list of difference, I shall give you an outline of action. But before, I shall assure you that the distrust is stronger than trust, and envy is stronger than adulation, respect, or admiration. The black slave, after receiving this indoctrination, shall carry on and will become self-refueling and self-generation for hundreds of years, maybe thousands. Basically, he instigated separation. You've got fine hair, you've got curse, you're tall, you are short. He separated them. And also, he said, don't forget to also pitch the old black male versus the young black male, and the young black male against the old black male. You must use the dark-skinned slave versus the light-skinned slaves, and the light-skinned slave versus the dark-skinned slaves. You must use the female versus the male, and the male versus the female. You must also have your white servants and oversee these trusts, all blacks. But it is necessary your slaves trust and depend on us. They must love, respect, and trust us only. So they break them, so they kind of love them. Crazy, isn't it? These kids were the kids to control. He said, if you use them, you have your wives and children using them, and never miss an opportunity. If used intensely for 1 year, the slaves themselves will remain perpetually distrustful. That's what it is. And it was in the interest and business of slaveholders to study human nature, and the slave nature in particular, with a view to practical results. And many of them attained astonishing proficiency in this direction. They had to deal not with earth, wood, and stone, but with men. And they, by every regard, they had known for their safety and prosperity. They had need to know the material on which they were to work. Unconscious of the injustice and wrong they were every hour perpetrated, and knowing what they themselves could do, were the victims of such wrongs. They were constantly looking for the effects of dread retribution. They watched, therefore, with skill and practiced eyes, and learned to read with great accuracy the state of mind and heart of the slave to this his sable face. Unusual sobriety, apparent abstraction, sallowness, and indifference, indeed any mood out of the common way, afforded ground for suspicion and inquiry. They were so careful. Okay, let's make a slave. Yeah, let's make a slave, a study of the scientific process of man breaking and slave making. Basically, it describes William's methods and rationality and results of the Anglo-Saxons' ideas and methods of ensuring the master-slave relationship. So the origin and development of a social being called the Negro. Let's make a slave a slave. What do I need? First of all, we need a black Negro man, a pregnant Negro woman, and her baby Negro boy. Second, I will use the same basic principle that we use in the breaking of a horse, combined with some more sustaining factors. So the same way they break a horse, they used to break a horse, the same way they used to make a slave and break a human. When we do it with horse, we break them from one form of life to another. That is, we reduce them from their natural state in nature, disconnect them from Mother Nature. Whatever nature provides them with the natural capacity to take of their needs and their needs of their offsprings, we break that natural string of independence from them and thereby create a dependency state so that they might be able to get from them useful production for the business and the pleasure. Yeah. As I read it, I find it quite sad, but it's just how it is. It says, for fear that our future generations might not understand the principles of breaking both horse and men, we lay down the R for it. If we are to sustain our basic economy, we must break the tie of both the beasts together, the nigger and the horse. We understand that short-range planning in economics results in period chaos, so that to avoid turmoil in the economy, it requires to have breadth and depth in long-range comprehensive planning, articulation, both skills and sharp perception. We lay out the following principles for long-range comprehensive economic planning. Right. Let's make the slide to continue. Both horse and nigger are no good to the economy in the wild or natural state. Both must be broken and tied together for orderly production. For the orderly futures, special and particular attention must be paid to the female and the young offspring. Both must be crossbred to produce a variety and division of labor. Both must be taught to respond to a particular new language. Psychological and physical instruction of containment must be created for both. We hold about 6 cardinal principles as true to be self-evident based on the following discourse concerning the economics of breaking and tying the horse and the nigger together, all inclusive of the 6 principles laid down above. Neither principle alone will suffice for good economics. All principles must be employed for the orderly good of the nation. Or the matrix, isn't it? Accordingly, both a wild horse and a wild or natural nigger is dangerous even if captured, for they will have a tendency to seek their customary freedom, and in doing so might kill you in your sleep. You cannot rest. They sleep while you're awake and are awake while you're asleep. They are dangerous near the family house, and it requires too much labor to watch them away from the house. Above all, you cannot get them to work in the natural state. Hence, both the horse and the nigger must be broken, that is, from one form of mental life to another. Keep the body and take the mind, in other words, break the will to resist. Yeah. Now the breaking process is the same for both the horse and the nigger, only slightly varied in degrees. But as we said before, there is an art in long-range economic planning. You must keep your eye and thoughts on the female and the offspring of the horse and the nigger. Pay little attention to the generations of original breaking, but concentrate on future generations. Therefore, if you break the female mother, she will break the offspring in its early years of development, and when the offspring is old enough to work, she will deliver up to you, for her normal female protective tendencies will have been lost in the original breaking process. For example, take the case of the wheel-stud horse, a female horse and an early infant horse, and compare the breaking process with 2 nigger males in the natural state. A pregnant nigger woman with her infant offspring, take the stud horse breaking for limited containment. Completely break the female horse until she becomes very gentle, whereas you or anybody can ride her in comfort. Bred the mare and the stud until you have the desire of spring, then you can turn the stud to freedom until you need him again. Train the female horse whereby she will eat out of your hand, and she will in turn train the infant horse to eat out of your hand also. When it comes to breed the uncivilized nigger, use the same process but varying degree and step at the pressure so as to do a complete reversal of the mind. Take the meanest and most restless nigger, strip him of his clothes in front of the remaining male niggers, the female, the nigger infant, tar and feather him, tie each leg to a different horse in opposite directions, set him fire and beat both horse and pull him apart in front of the remaining niggers. The next step is to take a bull whip and beat the remaining nigger male to the point of death in front of the female and the infant. Don't kill him, but put the fear of God in him, for he can be useful for the future breeding. Then take the female and run a series of tests on her to see if she will submit to your desire willingly. Test her in every way because she is the most important factor for good economics. If she shows any sign of resistance in submitting completely to your will, do not hesitate to use the wool whip on her to extract the last bit of pitch out of her. Take care not to kill her, for in doing so you spoil good economics. When in complete submission, she will drain her of a spleen in the early years to submit to labor when they became of age. Right, I think that's enough. There is more, but it gets quite deep. And I think you have a good overview of this. I mean, you can see that these people, they were not humans. I mean, how humans can do that to a human being, put them inside, fire with tar, tie them to a horse and almost kill them just to get control of them. Isn't it? You have to be a sentient program or be very, very evil like the Matrix Code that is completely deluded to be able to create machinery who do things like that, isn't it? It's absolutely diabolical and pure evil in anybody's eyes. But the truth needs to be told. The more awareness that we bring, the better. Because, guys, we think that this is done for black people. It's not. It's done to you. It's done to me. We've been slaves. We've been controlled. We've been manipulated. How much suffering have we gone through? How many illnesses that they're illusioned? I mean, how many years have been trying to, beat cancer? Yeah, and then COVID came, which is a much rarer virus. And in no time, they get a vaccine. And with cancer, they've been for so long. How many charities, cancer research, are part of the Illuminati elite, just getting money from us? Doing no research, but making sure that cancer stays very, very alive. They don't want to cure it. They want it to continue and, forever. They want to weaken us. And it is important that we realize what is being done to our Protestant systems and what is being done to us so we can stop it, guys. It is only us who can stop it. Yeah, the source has taken care of everything, but the source needs us to team up, isn't it? Needs us to awaken and to tell this to everybody, to awaken people, to pass the word and realize what, that it's not done to anybody, it's done to us collectively, it's done to the source itself, herself and himself, isn't it? Because it's both male and female, the source. Anyway, guys, I hope this is useful. I'm sorry that it's a bit upsetting, even for me to just go through it. I find it quite hard to swallow. My husband Amor had to toughen me up to be able to do videos like that because I find them so difficult. And every time the superconscious tells me to do a video as such, I really can I do a nice fun one, just some music and singing? And no, because the truth needs to be told, isn't it? Anyway, guys, with all the love in my heart, goodbye.